Good afternoon. My name is Tebogo Moletsane. Today we'll be doing mathematical literacy. The topic will be simple and compound interest. We're going to start with simple interest. What is simple interest? When you pay simple interest on a sum of money, the interest is calculated only on the principal amount for each year that you have the loan. E.g., if the interest is 7% per annum, you pay 7% of the principal as interest for each year that you have the loan. I'm going to make a simple example that I think will make sense to all of us. When we're talking about simple interest, we know that in our different locations we have people we call Bumachonisa. And then, for example, simple interest, if that particular person borrows you 100 Rand today, we all know that when you pay them back, you must pay them back 150. So now how much is the interest there? You can see that your interest will be 50 Rand, which means that it's 50% of what you borrowed. Let's say you borrowed this for the first week, and then you have to pay you borrow your money for a week. The 100 Rand for 1 week, you must pay 50%, which is 50 Rand. And then you are not able to pay that particular person. That means that the second week, you'll be owing that particular person 150. But because now, this person is only charging you on the principal amount. That means at the end of the day, you are only going to pay the interest, which is 50%, the interest of 50%, which is 50 Rand. So now remember, the money that you owe for that week will be 150 plus the 50 Rand for that particular week. So that means for the second week, you'll be owing that particular person 200. You are not able to pay that week again. You go to the third week with 200. How much is the interest? 50% of the principal amount. How much is that? That is 50 Rand. And then at the end of this week, this is the second week. This will be the third week. At the end of the second week, that means it will be the 200 that comes from the first week plus the 50 Rand from the third week. And at the end of that week, you'll be owing that particular person 250. That's how I can explain simple interest in a way that we all can understand, in a way that is done in our different locations. Let's move to our first question. Mzo borrowed 3,500 from his cousin at 9% per annum simple interest. He agrees to pay back the whole amount plus interest in equal amounts over a period of 2 years. And then the first question. Calculate the interest for 1 year. Use the formula interest is equals to P multiplied by I multiplied by N, where P stands for the principal amount, I stands for the rate or the interest, and then N stands for the number of years. So now let's look at what we have here. Look at the information that you had. How much did Mzo borrow? He borrowed 3,500. That will be the principal amount. And then, what else do we have? 9%. Your 9% will be your I in this case. And then what more do we have? He agrees to pay back the whole amount plus interest in equal amounts over a period of 2 years. So our N will be 2. But now let's look at the question. I hope you wrote that down. Let's look at the first question. It says, calculate the interest for 1 year. So now let's go to solving that particular. I wrote it down. The formula, it's interest is equals to P, which is principal amount, multiplied by I, which is interest, multiplied by N. So the interest will be equals to how much is our principal amount? Our principal amount is 3,500 multiplied by the interest. So now the interest, as we can see, it's 9%. So 9%, we can write it as 9 over 100. And 9 over 100 is the same as 0,09, because you're going to say 100 into 9, 0 comma times, and then you add your 0 there. 100 into 90, 0. And then you add another 0. 100 into 900, 9 times. And then we can say multiplied by 0,09. And then the first question said, how much will it be after 1 year? So we're going to multiply that by 1. So now let's see how much it's going to be. 3,500 multiplied by 0,09 multiplied by 1. How much do you get? 315. So the interest for 1 year is going to be 315 rand. Let's just see if that's all that we had to do. Calculate the interest for 1 year. Use the formula. Interest is equals to P multiplied by I multiplied by N. So now that means we have our answer for A. Let's go to our B, the question for B. What is the total amount that he must pay back? Remember the first one, it's only the interest for the first year. He is borrowing the money for 2 years and he's going to pay it back over 2 years. So now, let's calculate the whole amount and see how much it will be. Remember the question, what is the total amount that he must pay back? Let's see how much he must pay back. So now remember, it's over 2 years. So it's going to be I, interest is going to be 3,500 multiplied by 0,09 multiplied by 2. It's equals to. Let's calculate that quickly. 3,500 multiplied by 0,09 multiplied by 2. The interest for 2 years is going to be 630. 630. Let's just go back and see if that's all we had to do. What is the total amount that he must pay back? So remember, he must pay back the interest together with the money that he borrowed. So the money that he must pay back, the money that must be paid back will be, let's say, pay back will be 3,500 plus 630 rand. Let's add those two together. 3,500 plus 630 rand. It's 4,130. So the money that you must pay back will be 4,130. That's the whole amount that must be paid back. Let's go to our next question. Calculate his monthly payments. Remember, it was said that he's going to pay the money back in equal amounts over 2 years. So number C, if we calculate his monthly payments, 2 years, how many months do we have in 2 years? We have 12 months. So that means we'll be paying back over 24 months. That will be the 2 years. So now we're having 4,100. So we're going to say 4,130. We divide it by 24. 4,130 divided by 24 months. It gives us 172 rand and 8 cents. So now he's going to pay equal installments of 172 rand and 8 cents. That is what he's going to pay back for the 24 months. Let's move to our second question. 500 earns 12% simple interest per annum. What is the interest after 9 months? Use the formula. Interest is equals to P multiplied by I multiplied by N. So what do we have there? 500 rand earns 12% simple interest per annum. So now what do we have there? We have our principal amount. Please write that down, which is 500. And then we have our interest, which is 12%. And then we are left with the N, which is what? 500 and 12% simple interest per annum. What is the interest after 9 months? So now the N there, we're having 9 months. So let's go to solving that. What I'm having here, principal amount 500 rand, the interest 12%, and then N, which in our case it's in months, it's 9 months. So now let's start with the interest. Our interest is 12 over 100, which is equals to 0.12. Let's substitute into our formula. Interest will be equals to 500 multiplied by 0.12 multiplied by 9 over 12. Remember, in a year we're having 12 months. So 9 is just a fraction of the month that we are having in a year. You can change this into a decimal. Let's just see. We have 9 over 12. Let's first change it in. Let's first simplify. 3 into 9 will go in 3 times over 4. And then 4 into 3 is going to be 0, and then we add 0. And then 4 into 30. How many times? It goes in 7 times. And then what remains? We are left with 2. And then we add 0. And then 4 into 20. We have 5. So 9 over 12 is the same as 0.75. Now let's solve our problem. $500 multiplied by 0.12 multiplied by fraction 9 over 12. And it's going to give us 45 rand. You can use 0.775. Substitute in that place just to see. 500 multiplied by 0.12 multiplied by 0.75. It's still going to give you 45 rand. And then let's move to other questions. Calculate the total amount after 3 years. So now our N is changing to 3 years. 500 earns 12% simple interest per annum. Calculate the total amount after 3 years. So now our N, it's 3, which is 3 years. So it's going to be I, interest, is equals to 500 multiplied by 0.12 multiplied by 3. Let's calculate that. 500 multiplied by 0.12 multiplied by 3. And it gives us 180 rand. Let's go back. They say you must calculate the total amount after 3 years. So now remember, the 180 is only the interest. So the question says calculate the total amount after 3 years. So now let's go back. We have an interest of 180. So the total amount will be the 500 that we put in plus the interest that we received, and then our answer is going to be 680 rand. Let's move to our next question. Meta bought furniture for 22,000 on the agreement that she pay a 10% deposit and then 26% simple interest per annum on the remainder. She must pay capital plus the interest back in monthly payments over 24 months. So now what do we have here? If you look at this, we have two interest rates. The first one, which is the 10%, so that you're not confused, just write that the 10% is for the deposit, and then the 26% will be for the remaining amount. So now let's see again. Meta bought furniture for 22,000. 22,000 also important. The furniture was 22,000 on the agreement that she pays a 10% deposit and then 26 simple interest per annum on the remainder. She must pay the capital plus the interest back in monthly payments over 24 months. A. Calculate the deposit amount. Calculate the deposit amount. So let's calculate. What do we have here? We have 22,000 that we must pay. But before doing that, we must calculate 10% of 22,000, which is going to be our deposit. So deposit will be equals to 22,000 multiplied by 10% is the same as 10 over 100, which is equals to 0.1. So we're going to multiply that by 0.1 and then equals to, let's see how much deposit she's going to pay. 22,000, 1, 2, 3, multiplied by 0,1, and it gives us 2,200. So the deposit that she's going to pay is going to be 2,200. So now let's see what must happen next. Calculate the deposit amount. We have our deposit amount, which is 2,200. What is the interest on the remainder? Remember, on the amount that's remaining, we must calculate 26% simple interest. What is the interest on the remainder? So let's calculate that. How much is the remainder? Remember, we started with 22,000. We must subtract the deposit, which is 2,200, and then we'll be left with how much? Let's see. 22,000 minus 2,200. The money that she must pay back is 19,800. 19,800 plus interest, remember. So now, let's calculate 26% of the remaining amount. So we have 19,800. We multiply by 26 over 100, which is 100 into 26, 0, and then we add 0. 100 into 260, 2 times, we add 0. 100 into 600, 6 times. So we're going to have 0,26. Let's now calculate that. $19,800 multiplied by 0,26, and then it's going to give us 5,148. Let's go back to the question. Meta bought furniture for 22,000 on the agreement that she pays a 10% deposit and then 26% simple interest per annum. On the remainder, she must pay the capital plus the interest back in monthly payments over 24 months. What is the interest on the remainder? So now if we look at this whole thing, the interest on the remainder must be 26%, and then from there the amount that she's going to pay back, she's going to pay the whole amount over 2 years. So now let's add the two amounts together to see how much she must pay back. We have 19,800 plus 5,148, and then it's going to give us 19,800 plus 5,148. It gives us 24,948. So now the remaining amount and its interest must be paid back over 2 years. So that means that 24,948 must be divided by 24, which is 2 years. Let's see how much she's going to pay. 24,948 divided by 24. It's going to give us 1,039 rand 50 cents. That's how much she must pay back over 2 years. Let's go to our next question. At what simple interest rate per year will you have to invest 30,000 if you want your interest to double value in 5 years' time? At what simple interest rate per year will you have to invest 30,000 if you want your investment to double value in 5 years' time? What do we have here? We don't have the interest, which is the rate. We have our principal amount, which is 30,000. We have our N, which is 5 years. If you look at the statement, they say at what simple interest rate per year will you have to invest 30,000 if you want your investment to double? So now we have 30,000 doubled in 5 years. So now what does it mean, doubled? It simply means that we must multiply it by 2, and then at the end of 5 years, that's the amount that we're going to have. Let's see. Principal amount, it's 30,000. The rate, we don't know. The number of years, we have 5 years. And then at the end of 5 years, we want our money to be doubled, which means we'll be having 60,000. So now let's see. Where do we start? Where do we start? We know already here that 60,000, we have our principal amount and we have our interest. So now let's take out our principal amount. That means that we'll be left with the interest of 30,000. So now interest, it's 30,000. So now how long did it take us to get this 30,000? It took us 5 years to have 30,000. So now let's see. In 1 year, how much interest did we get? To get the interest of 1 year, we must take our 30,000 interest divided by the number of years, which is 5, and then we're going to get interest for 1 year, which is 6,000. Interest for 1 year, which is 6,000. So now let's see, 6,000, what percentage is 6,000 of 30,000? So now we're going to say 6,000, we divide it by 30,000, and then we multiply by 100/1. Remember, we're looking for the rate, which is R. So now this one can cancel that one. This one can cancel that one. This one can cancel that one. And then this 0 also can cancel with that one. And then 6 multiplied by 10, it's going to give us 60. 3 multiplied by 1, it's going to give us 30. And then from there we say 60 divided by 3, it's going to give us, sorry for that, it's going to give us 20%. So now, that means the simple interest will be 20%. Let me just, the simple interest will be 20%. Let's now move to our fifth question. For how long will you have to invest 14,000 at 9% per year, simple interest to earn 5,040 Rand interest? For how long will you have to invest 14,000 at 9% per year, simple interest, to earn 5,040 Rand interest? So now let's look at what we have here. P, for how long will you have to invest 14,000? So that means the amount that we are investing, it's 14,000. Our P will be 14,000. Our R at 9%. So our R will be 9% per year, simple interest to earn 5,040 Rand interest. So now N, we don't have the N, it's a question mark. And then we have the interest, which is 5,040 Rand. What we have the principal amount, which is 14,000, and then we have our rate, which is 9%. We don't have N, that's what we'll be looking for. And then we have our interest. So now where do we start solving this? Let's see. $5,040, it's our final interest amount. So now, what is the interest for every year? We don't know. That's what we have to find out, and that's what's going to help us. So now, we know that it's 14,000 at 9%. So we're simply going to say 14,000 multiplied by 9%, which is 9 over 100, which is 0,09. So now we're going to say multiplied by 0,09. So now let's see how much we get. 14,000 multiplied by 0,09, and it gives us 1,260. So now there we have our interest for 1 year. So remember, we also have our total interest, which is 5,040. So now we want to know for how long are we going to invest this amount so that we can get 5,040. So now let's see. The total interest is 5,040 rand. And then the interest for each year, it's 1,260, or rather, interest for 1 year is 1,260. So now let's see. 5,040 rand divided by 1,260 gives us 4 years. So now the answer is going to be 4 years. So now, in order for us to get an interest of 5,040, we must invest 14,000 for 4 years. Let's now go to our next question. There's one school that wants us to go back to question number 3. So let's just quickly go back to question number 3. Question number 3 says that Meta bought furniture for 22,000 on the agreement that she pays a 10% deposit and then 26% simple interest per annum. On the remainder, she must pay the capital plus the interest back in monthly payments over 24 months. And then 26% simple interest per annum. On the remainder, she must pay the capital plus the interest back in monthly payments over 24 months. So now if you look at this question, the reason I did it like this is because they're just saying then 26% simple interest per annum on the remainder. So now that means the 26% must be calculated on the amount that is remaining. And then after calculating the 26% simple interest, that amount she must pay the capital, which is 19,000 that was left, plus the interest back in monthly payments over 24 months. So let's go through what I did there. Remember we said the first thing there, we have 10% deposit. I'm just writing it down again. And then we have 26% simple interest per annum on the remainder. It did not say simple interest per annum for 2 years on the remainder. The 26% is just interest per annum on the remainder. And then after the 26%, she must pay the capital, which is the money that was left, and the interest back in monthly payments over 24 months. So now let's do it again. There, as we saw, the money the furniture was 22,000. So now there, we start by saying 22,000, and then we multiply 10%. So it's going to be 22,000 multiplied by, and then it gives us 2,200. And then after that, the instruction says, on the remainder, we calculate 26% simple interest per annum on the remainder. So now, the remainder, we're going to take our 22,000 and then subtract 2,200. and then we get 19,800. So now the remainder is 19,800. So now we take that 19,800, we multiply it with 26%, which is the same as 0.26. And then it's going to be 19,800 multiplied by 0.26. And then it gives us 5,148. So now, the money that he must pay back is the remainder plus the interest so it's 5,148 plus 19,800, and it's going to give us 24,948, and then this amount we must pay it back over 2 years, so we're going to divide this amount by 24, and then from there divide by 24, and then we're going to pay 1,039 rand 50. Just read the question carefully, and then you'll see that. Let's go to our next question. Which was question 5. Question 5 asks, for how long will you have to invest? No, we're through with question 5. We must go to question 6. Sorry for that. For how long must 8,500 be invested at 8% per year, simple interest, in order to have a value of 10,880. For how long must 8,500 be invested at 8% per year, simple interest, in order to have a value of 10,880? Let's look at what we have there. We have our principal amount, which is 8,500. We have our interest there, our interest rate, which is 8%. We have our interest, which is 10,880. And then N, there's nothing for N. That's what we're supposed to look for. So now let's start. Again, in this case, you can see that it's a similar case. You have your total interest. You have your principal amount. You have your rate, your interest rate, which is 8%. So we start by saying 8,500 multiplied by the interest, which is 8 over 100, and it's going to give us 0.08, and then we multiply with 0.08. So now let's see. 8,500 multiplied by 0.08, and then it's going to give us 680. So now we write it. Interest for 1 year is going to be 680. So now let's see, 680, the interest, the whole interest that we have there, how much is it? We have a total interest. Let's go back to the question again. It seems as if I missed something there. Let's go through it again. For how long must 8,500 be invested at 8% per year simple interest in order to have a value? So now when they say a value, that means that it's 8,500 plus the interest. Sorry for that, I just missed that. So now let's see. 10,880, it's 8,500 plus the interest. So now we must find the interest. Let's calculate that. So we're going to take our 10,880 and then we subtract 8,500 so that we find our interest. 10,880 minus how much? 8,500 is going to give us 2,380. So now this is the interest for the whole period, and then 680 it's interest for 1 year. So now we take total interest, and then we divide it by interest for 1 year. So we're going to have 2,380, and then we divide it by 680, and then how much do we get? 2,380 divided by 680, 3.5. So that means that it's 3.5 years. So it simply means that our N will be 3.5 years. 3.5 years. Let me give you one question so that you can work through it. I'm going to leave it on the screen so that you can go through it. Elizabeth invests money 4 years ago at 10.5% per year simple interest. If this investment earned a total of 3,612 interest, what amount did Elizabeth invest? Elizabeth invested money 4 years ago at 10.5% per year simple interest. If this investment earned a total of 3,612 interest, what amount did Elizabeth invest? So now look at what you have there, and then look at what you don't have, and then try to find what you don't have. Guys, we're taking a quick break. Please look at the question and try to work it out, and then after the break, we'll solve it together.